This is Spilling Royal Tea with Sean Mandell.
Maggie, you're looking very stylish and coronation appropriate for our final episode before the coronation of King Charles III.
Oh, thank you so much, Sean. Sometimes I think that I follow the royal family only for the fascinators.
For our listeners who are listening and not just watching us on YouTube, which, yes, you can watch us on YouTube as well, Maggie has donned a delightful blue fascinator. I might even have paused to say royal blue.
It's a royal navy. Yeah.
You know who loves navy is Meghan Markle for a royal occasion, yes. But I digress. But it is the perfect fascinator for such an occasion. I am just wearing my T-shirt that says, "If found, please return to Buckingham Palace," because should my body ever wash up on a shore or in a dumpster somewhere, if I'm wearing this, it's generally good advice for someone. But this is all alluding to the fact that we are in the home stretch of this run-up to the coronation. Like, if we are in a run-up, you need to be sprinting to get to the finish line now if you're hoping to be the first one across the line. We are just days away from the coronation happening in London, King Charles III.
Yeah, so we are going to focus almost exclusively on the coronation. When this episode drops in your feed, it'll be, 48 hours, less than 48
That's
hours, right?
That's right.
So we're going to get into the nitty-gritties of where to watch it, how to watch it, what to watch for, the main characters.
Other than Maggie and me, of course.
Oh, yeah. That goes without saying, right?
Obviously.
But we also have a really great interview that we're excited to share.
Yes, we are going to be talking with the ladies from Keeping Up with the Windsors, Rachael and Michelle. They are the co-hosts of a wonderful podcast about the royals, as you may have surmised, that really digs into their working life. Their working engagements, follows them around to the different things that they actually do as part of their job job.
Yes, and they are British. It's a British podcast, so we're excited to be able to share the perspective from that side of the pond.
All right, Maggie, time to put the kettle on.
Yeah, let's spill some royal tea.
This is Spilling Royal Tea, a podcast that follows the piping hot stories of the British royal family, from London to Montecito, all the way to the upcoming coronation of King Charles. I'm Sean Mandell, a producer, pop culture devotee, and part-time royal correspondent.
And I'm Maggie Van Dorn, the show's producer, Sean's biggest fan, and his occasional sidekick.
In each episode, we will spill the tea.
That's American for gossip.
On the latest stories about the heir, the spare, and their kin. Tea will be served with some cultural context and history from across the pond that you can't go without. So without further ado, let's spill the royal tea.
So normally we would talk about headlines, royal headlines this week at this part of the show. There are, of course, royal stories going on. You can look those up. One in particular I just want to quickly draw your attention to. Meghan and Harry had a date night at a Lakers game.
Super
Go to
cute.
TMZ.com. Super cute.
Mm-hmm.
They were on the kiss cam. They didn't. Anyway, okay, just go and look that up, right? That's what you want to do. But we don't have time for all the rest of it because the one big headline this week is that it is Coronation Week. We are in the final hours of this whole shebang. So we're going to talk to you about how you should watch it, where you should watch it, and what to watch for, really. To begin, let's start with the time. So if you are in the UK, it is happening on Saturday, the 6th of May, which is, again, should be about 48 hours from now, from when this podcast comes out. But that will be happening at local time of 11 a.m. That's when the actual service starts, right? So this is when King Charles will be in the church. We're going to be having the procession. All the sort of guests will be seated because this is a religious ceremony. Remember, it'll be at Westminster Abbey. That is the official beginning. And that's typically the time that any big royal function happens, a wedding or whatnot. It's always 11 a.m. And they've probably timed that for different time zones.
But of course, it means that you got to be up a little bit earlier to see the coverage running up to the event itself.
Right. And even if you want to watch just the event itself, I mean, granted, there's going to be playback available. And also, TMZ.com is going to be covering the best and funniest and most interesting and most salacious moments as well that we will have our eyes on during the coronation. But if you want to watch the entire thing, you can watch it either on cable or live stream, which we'll get into in a second. But the important thing to note is that that time difference that Maggie alluded to. So if you are on the west coast of the United States, if you're in LA, where I am, there is an 8-hour time difference between LA and London. So 11 a.m. start for the service, like hard start, meaning, programs getting kicked off, means a 3 a.m.
Yikes. Sean.
Yeah.
Okay, I know you and I have both gotten up really early for previous weddings. What do you recommend for people who do want to be up for it? Like, how do you prepare mentally, spiritually for this event?
What a question. I do advise sugar in some form. I advise sugar and caffeine in some form, whether that be coffee, whether that be tea, whether that be cake, whether that be scones, some sort of one of those two, of both of those categories, I really recommend. In terms of how much time you want to give yourself, if you want to watch it live and you're on the West Coast, which, by the way, so 3 a.m. on the West Coast means 6 a.m. on the East Coast in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
You get off a little easier if you're on the East Coast. So you have to make a decision as a West Coaster. If you're going to really do this, you got to make a decision of, are you going to try and take a nap somewhere that night? Because it's not sleeping. Let's be clear about that. It's not sleeping. It is not a full night. You will be getting a nap at most. And also, how hardcore are you? Because do you want to be watching coverage, the before coverage, like the leading up to it? Because as anybody who's seen any sporting event ever, and that's what this is essentially
this
being
is our
treated
sporting
as.
Event.
This is a sporting event. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
There's the Oscars, there's the Super Bowl, and there's the coronation, which really is actually the most rare of all those things, because once in 70 years.
Exactly.
But again, I digress. I would say that you might be better off taking like a disco nap Friday afternoon, Friday evening, and then staying up late, staying up through it.
Yeah, maybe throw a party, like a little impromptu coronation party.
I mean, and I've done that. I've done not a coronation party, but I've done a royal wedding party before, and that's very fun. Granted, you have to get a group of people that are very committed because
sacrifices are made.
Sacrifices are made. But if you get some food, you get some desserts, maybe a little
champagne
bubbly or something. If you're so inclined, why not? It can be a fun way to do it. But you will be able to watch it after the fact as well. There will be clips and everything. The whole service will be about, a couple of hours. You can watch it streaming. One place I'll tell everybody that you can watch it streaming that's super easy to find and free is Sky News. If you go on YouTube, Sky News has a 24-hour news channel that you can watch for free on YouTube in the U.S., and they, of course, they're primarily based out of Britain, so you can watch that whole service there. The royal family also has a YouTube channel that they'll be streaming the service and everything on their YouTube channel, but it'll just be without any commentary or whatnot.
Yeah.
So if you want to watch it with commentary, you could go to Sky News if you don't have any cable or anything like that. Otherwise, all your major networks, news networks, ABC, for example, is going to have a big special on it as well. And if you don't, if you miss the news commentators and you don't want to watch Sky or whatnot, that's what Twitter's for. So,
that's true.
There's going to be a lot of opportunities for people to watch. So definitely find whatever way suits you best.
Yeah. So let's talk about what the program entails. We have been talking about this all season, but yes. King Charles and Queen Camilla are expected to travel to Westminster Abbey on the morning of May 6th. It is called the King's Procession.
Yeah, so they will go on this procession to Westminster Abbey, which is where the ceremony is going to be taking place. I mean, this is a service that goes back 1,000 years. There are going to be hymns, some of which Charles has, personally selected. There are going to be oaths taken, but interestingly enough, this year, this is a little bit of controversial question or thing, or at least an item that people are talking about is normally you would have the peers who are, it's where this word comes from. It means, lords and ladies and dukes and duchesses and those with titles. In the UK, they would take an oath to the sovereign, saying they're pledging their fidelity to them. This year, it's being chosen to be an oath of the people that you watching at home and will say, if you're a British subject, say your oath to the king, and that this is something the people in the church as well. But the idea is that it's not just the sort of the dukes and duchesses that make this oath, but everybody. But
it's kind of a I pledge allegiance to the flag sort of.
It's an I pledge
moment?
allegiance to the flag moment. But there are some people who are like, well, I don't want to pledge allegiance to the flag. So they're, people who are not monarchists. So there's that going on as well. So all of this is like a big part of it. The Princess Royal, Princess Anne, is going to be playing a large part in the coronation ceremony, which is interesting. She is Charles's sister, and she has military experience herself. She is going to be leading a brigade of about 6,000 troops during this procession on horseback.
On horseback, nonetheless.
Nonetheless, which the queen also, the women in this family, just as much as the men, do their military service and, get on horseback and march those troops. So be looking out for Anne for that. Prince George is going to have a role as a page boy in this in the coronation, as will also Queen Consort Camilla's grandchildren, which we've alluded to before. So they're going to be there as well.
Obviously, we're going to be looking out for Prince Harry, maybe a couple rows back.
Right. Where is he going to be seated? We don't know, and that's going to be a big question. He's probably not going to be in military uniform, but definitely look out for it, because if he is, which is something he always wants to be able to wear at these sort of functions, that will be a big deal, meaning that Charles has made an olive branch out to him. But again, I wouldn't expect him to.
Okay.
And then the big thing to look for is the oath, taking of the oath to defend, to defend the faith, to defend the crown. And there is a sacred moment that is going to not be shown, we don't think, of him being anointed with holy oil. It's the moment where he actually becomes king. It's like the most sacred moment of the ceremony. So we'll be interested to see how that's filmed, what we do see, what we don't see. And then, as well, the other thing I'd be looking for is the crowds. How big are these crowds going to be? What are the crowds' reactions going to be? So you mentioned Harry's going to be there. Is he going to be booed at all? We don't know. Just all of those things are different factors to keep an eye on as you tune in.
And then when is the coronation concert itself? Is it
the
same day or next day?
It's the next day.
Okay.
And it's actually on Sunday. It's a whole weekend of festivities. It is a bank holiday, as they call it in the UK, which means, a sort of a government-given day off. So they have a long weekend there in the UK. Sadly, we do not here in the US. Had to get rid of that monarchy. But anyway, so those are some things that I think will serve you well to keep your eye out for.
Yeah. Now, Sean, if people want to hear your ongoing commentary throughout the coronation, where can they find you?
What a question. They can find me on Twitter at Sean Mandell. I will be there live tweeting it. And there may be another place where I may be as well, but we'll check my Twitter. And if I do go anywhere else,
let us know there.
I'll let you know there. And if you're in the UK, I am going to be doing some interviews on the British radio there. So listen, if you're listening to the radio, hopefully you'll hear my voice. And definitely tune into my Twitter. I'll be giving live reactions in my pajamas from 2 a.m. onwards.
Fantastic.
Rachael, Michelle, welcome to Spilling Royal Tea.
Thank you so much for having us, Sean.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for making time in the wee hours there in the UK. I know your schedule must be jam-packed, even more so than mine, because you have in-person things to be doing that I can't partake of, out here in Los Angeles. But I want to take it back to the very beginning of your podcast. What inspired you both to start Keeping Up with the Windsors?
Well, we was, like everybody else, in the middle of a pandemic. And we would always speak about the royal family. And it was one of those things, it's like, do you know what? Harry and Meghan's Oprah interview is coming up. why don't we just press record and see what happens? We didn't even know at that point if we were even going to put it live. And it's just snowballed from there. And we've just celebrated our 2-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you find that there's a topic or subject matter? I mean, I think, you kind of just touched on something that we talk a lot about on this podcast, whether we plan to or not, which is Meghan and Harry. And, we'll touch on them, maybe a little bit more later. But are there things that you find continually popping up?
Well, as you probably know, Sean, it's a bit like running on a treadmill constantly, isn't it?
Yes.
We are keeping up with these Windsors. I think the main thing for us is our podcast is predominantly talking about their engagements, about patronages, about their initiatives, and really honing in on what their service is about. And everything else becomes a bonus. So that's what we tend to do. Every week we look at what has been the engagement they've been on, maybe the funniest thing or that type of thing. But then around that are the themes of possibly the institution versus the press, or the family versus the institution. But I think the main thing that we've found is this common values between people within the within the royal community, and this love for the Queen as well. That's really come out, and especially since she's passed as well. I think there hasn't been a day where we haven't had somebody on Instagram saying we really miss her. So I mean, I'm sure you can. Did you like the Queen, Sean?
Yes, I did. It's funny though for me, because there's this sort of maybe false narrative out there that actually sometimes I still see on social media about, like, if you are a Princess Diana fan, which was my sort of like entryway into the royal world as a kid, that there's this idea that, if you're a Princess Diana fan, like, you didn't like, Queen Elizabeth II. And I don't think that those two things are, mutually exclusive, and, that they didn't, there's this idea that they didn't like each other, which also, from what I know, is like not true. So it's, so I am definitely a Queen Elizabeth II fan. I have a Christmas ornament of her that hangs in a place of privilege. I actually still to this day get gifts. Like, I have one of our other guests, who is a good friend of mine, Jamie Samhan, got me Queen and Corgi salt and pepper shakers one year for my birthday. So there's quite a little bit of a collection growing up. That's usually, it's either Diana or the Queen. So we'll see, I just got, someone else just gifted me a Diana coffee table book the other day. So they're like, oh, I saw this and got it for you. I'm like, great. It's not even my birthday. Thank you.
And remember, once you're a royal fan, that's it then. You're just going to get memorabilia constantly.
You're just that person. It's like, I realized, like, I had a whole moment to myself the other day where I realized that, like, people were talking about my birthday, which is coming up now. And they're like, oh, well, what's it going to be? Princess Diana themed or Taylor Swift themed? And I'm like, oh my God, I have to rein it in. I really have to rein it in, because now this is just, I mean, like, I know that's what my entire personality is, but now that, like, the rest of the world is just putting it down to that, I've got to calm down.
Yeah.
But the other thing that people might think that my personality really is about is Meghan and Harry, because it is something that I get asked a lot about. And it's where I actually, even though I grew up, sort of watching the royals, I started working professionally in the royal world because of Meghan and Harry. I'm curious, it seems to be that you try not to focus too much on Meghan and Harry on your podcast. As you said, you do focus on the engagements, which is really interesting, because a lot of people don't, realize how much work they do, like those engagements. But I'm curious if you find that difficult, at times, and if you find yourselves that, in some way or another, you can't not discuss them. You can't not discuss whatever's going on in the royal world without discussing them.
Yeah, I mean, we made a conscious decision that once the Oprah interview, they said that they were obviously no longer going to be working royals, that we wouldn't talk about them unless it pertained to the royal family. So obviously, once we've had Harry's book come out and the Netflix documentary, anything that when they speak about the royal family, we will then discuss. But when it comes to their actual day-to-day and news about them, we don't tend to focus on them, because that was a decision that we made from the beginning, was to, because that's what they said. They didn't want to be working royals. And so for us, we focus on the work of the members of the royal family that do still work for the institution.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
I was going to say, Sean, it is hard because you're right. There's a lot of I don't want to say fanfare around them, right? But there's a fine line.
Attention, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. But there is a fine line because I think some of the topics possibly some of them we don't know how factual those things are, and we just want to keep it to as many facts as we can. So sometimes it's great to talk about, for instance, the book Spare or the documentary, because those are from Harry and Meghan's own. They're telling that story. They're telling what their side of the story is. So
Right.
It's great to do some fact checking around that and to see how it feels from a royal fan perspective, and whether what they're saying actually has merit, and to understand their point. It's really interesting, isn't it, as a royal fan, to see all of the different sides. And I think that is where we're interested in, rather than the maybe the he said, she said of it all.
I agree to your point. I think it makes a big difference when, you have someone actually coming outright and saying something, and then whether or not you agree with that, that's a different matter, and you can do the fact checking, as a lot of people have, or put things in context. But yeah, it does get very tricky with the sourcing, and it can get we get in the weeds here. I'm curious, what the sense is in the UK, just from your casual conversations. You've been out there, I follow you on social media, I see you going to the engagements that the royals are at. I'm curious if there is chatter, if you hear chatter about Harry's upcoming visit, if people are excited that he's coming, or how they feel in general, or if they're even commenting on him at all.
I wouldn't necessarily say people are excited about Harry attending. I think we spoke about this on our podcast the other week, is we always said we would hope that he would come as the son of the king. He has a right to be there. It's one of those things then when the whole Meghan and Harry together, it just drama ensues. That's the nature of them, unfortunately, at this point.
Right.
Is that they just cause, even the mention of their names, sometimes it gets people's backs up. So I think the general feeling of people that we know, especially talking to people over on social media that follow us and listen to our podcast, people, it's quite divided. Some people are very happy that Harry's attending. Some people feel that he shouldn't be attending because of everything that has happened since they've left the institution. So it is very difficult to gauge, because no two people's opinions and thoughts are the same.
Right.
Yeah. When we were at the Platinum Jubilee, we were there in the crowd when they arrived at St. Paul's Cathedral, and there was audible boos, but then there was audible cheers as well. I would say there were a little edging on more boos than that, but there wasn't really widespread in the press. So from our experience, if that was the case, and that was even pre the documentary and the book,
right,
I'm not sure how the crowd would react. I mean, I think Harry coming to the coronation is a good move. I think his invitation, obviously we knew he would get an invitation. It's a state occasion. He is a councillor of state as well. So it makes sense that he would be invited, and also that Meghan would be invited as well. But I think actually, like Rach just said, I think because there is that, they have, you just mentioned, Sean, they bring a lot of attention, and that might actually take attention away from the king as well. So maybe that's another reason. I think we don't know, do we? We're just speculating, but
No, we've talked about that as well, and that specific action. It's interesting that you mentioned the boos, because I remember watching those services and hearing them, just in sort of like in a live feed of it, right? I had it on without any sort of like news commentary. I was like checking things on Twitter, but just watching the live feed, and I could hear it. And then I went to Twitter to see if people were actually doing that, like if I wasn't the only one who was hearing that, and they were. And there's been other people we've spoken to this season that said, that Meghan may not be going because she either doesn't want to be, like, she feels she might be booed, doesn't want to be booed, or there's a way in which she may also, to this point of being a distraction, she may not want that to be what people talk about on Charles's day. Like, if you want to take, if you're looking for a view in which she's trying to be a healer in the family, and make sure that Charles does get the sort of credit and due and attention that I think we, all can feel that he wants, on a very important day. I think there is an argument to be made that maybe she's saying, okay, well, I'll step back here because, even if I can take it, the conversation's going to be about me. And it's always going to be about me to some extent if I'm there or I'm not. But maybe this is the best way I can, not make it about me. But as you said, it's like everybody's going to have their own sort of take on it. And it's interesting too, because it seems to be the different takes do seem to break down a lot by like age difference, right, as well. Like, and I think that's something here in the U.S., what people think of Meghan and Harry, what people think of, any of the varying members of the Windsor family that you track. It kind of, their age is a factor in terms of their popularity. And I'm curious, there is a new poll that's come out that's shown that about 70% or so of younger Britons just don't dislike the monarchy, but just aren't sort of really enthused about it, or more or less indifferent about it. You guys obviously are clearly very enthused about about the monarchy. I don't know. It's just I'm reading. It was a bold guess, and I felt like I was just gonna lob it out there and take a chance.
Yes.
So but whatever. Bold moves.
Yeah.
So tell me if I'm wrong, but that was my feeling.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if you think that if you have a sense of if that is accurate, again, just colloquially speaking, with people in the UK, with people with younger generations, and if you think there might be a way in which this coronation might appeal to to people that are currently maybe not all that interested in the monarchy.
I think with the polls, we don't really necessarily pay attention to them because they're not a true reflection of how many people are. So I think the recent poll that you're talking about, only 4,000 people were actually polled in that, considering how many millions of people live in the UK.
Right.
It's not a true reflection of how people actually feel. But I understand the younger generation, I've got a 15-year-old niece. Is she interested in the monarchy? No, she's not really interested. She knows who they are. She's not interested. She doesn't follow them like I do. Will she watch the coronation? No, she'll probably see a bit of it. But it's not one of those things where she's going to sit down like I would and watch the whole thing from start to finish. And it is really interesting. But I think as well with social media, a lot of, if you look at the younger influencers at the moment, specifically if you're looking at TikTok, there is that hunger there for it. People are intrigued. And I think it's because of the history of it and not necessarily because of whose coronation it is. It may be felt a bit different if it was William's coronation, for example, because you have that younger generation feel more of an attachment to him and Catherine rather than they do to Charles and Camilla.
And interestingly, it's something that it keeps being brought to my attention, if Diana was being, crowned queen instead of Camilla. I think that's something that, obviously that would be an incredibly alternate parallel universe for that to be something that's taking place. But it's interesting, as you say, that it's that there is this interest about sort of like the history and what this is, because we haven't had anything, this hasn't occurred in 70 years. And, to that point, I wonder, there's the concert that's going to be happening. Do you think that is going to be the part of the coronation that might appeal the most to young people? I mean, we're going to have, there's going to be some celebrity acts there. There's going to be Katy Perry performing, which is probably the name most likely to get attention among or from a younger audience.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. I think as well, because it's going to be broadcast on television. Obviously, we got the 5,000 that have the tickets, and then you also have the wide appeal of people watching this from all over the world. It's going to be an amazing event. We've had some photographs that have been posted this, I think it was today or yesterday, about the Coronation Concert and what it's going to actually look like. It looks spectacular. The set design, the setting with Windsor Castle at the background. How is that not going to attract some people, and maybe not to love the royals, but just go, oh, this is a really fun thing, you know, and maybe they chat about the big help out or the big lunch, and you go, okay, maybe somebody in my local area is having something, so maybe they get involved in that way as well, rather than just, this is a cool concert. You never know, do you? You never know, because a lot of people have said, I got into loving the royals because of Diana. Like, actually, Sean, you've just mentioned that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, sometimes it takes a big event to spark somebody's interest, and then they maybe go on TikTok and have a look, or they go onto the royal website and have a look at what's going on. So we never know. We have hope. We will see. But again, we do know that the younger generation have this kind of apathy towards the royals, but as people get older, they start to appreciate, not always, but they do appreciate some institutions a little bit more, and then the love of the royals kind of sneaks in a little bit. So you never know. We have hope, but you know, each to their own, and everyone has their own opinions, right?
Totally. And it's interesting, you know, it just made me think of, and Katy Perry is an American.
Yes.
Which, by the way, like, I should say this, but she's actually has said that she's partaking in the concert because of some work that she's done with Prince Charles.
Yeah,
and
British Asian Trust. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With charity efforts, and so she was like, of course, I'm there. And she's performed at other big events, like the Democratic National Convention in the U.S. for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Orlando Bloom, who's Brit, like, talked about how she loves performing these big events. But the thing that I was just thinking of, and the reason why I caveat that she's an American, is that so it may not help necessarily stir, you know, the patriotic souls of Brits, but is that, you know, the performance of the national anthem by Whitney Houston at the Super Bowl in the U.S. is this iconic moment that made the national anthem become a top 10 single, like, on the Billboard charts, and it made people feel a certain way about the national anthem and about America that people who had never felt that way before all of a sudden did. And it was this sort of catalyst event where it changed how people felt about that song and felt about their country even. Now, granted, you know, what happens after that, long story. But in that moment, a change happened. So to your point, it's like, yeah, there is always something big that can transpire, or even something small but meaningful that might catch the eye or the imagination.
Yeah, and what's really interesting you say about that is when we was at the Jubilee last year, the concert then wasn't even on our radar. It was something that we were going to go to the Mall, we were going to see because we were there, and it actually happened to be our favourite event that we went to throughout the whole 4 days.
Sean, it was incredible. It was incredible.
So you've been trying to get. Listen. We in America have not been following this as closely as you both have, because there's been, as you've called it, a concert ticketing fiasco. Fiasco. I would like you to give our listeners here, we're international, but, you know, a lot of our listeners are from the U.S. Give them a little bit of an update on what this is, what's going on, and tell us the big question we want to know is this worse than Ticketmaster's Taylor Swift debacle? Because if it is, I think we got to call the White House.
Okay. I'm gonna just let it lie. No, it wasn't as bad as a Taylor Swift
Okay, I'll
debacle.
calm down then.
It just wasn't. The reason why is because these tickets were free, so we just, at least the money side didn't go up a bit. So yeah, I think the main thing with this was when we first entered the ballot, it said on a first come first served basis, 5,000 tickets will be allocated with a +1. You have to enter the competition anytime between a certain date, and then they'll do the ballot. So as long as you have your ballot in by a certain date, it doesn't really matter. It's not like a first come first served thing. Right. Then all the tickets got allocated. So Rachel and I didn't get a ticket. So boo-hoo, we're not going. Then last week...
Until we figure out
we'll figure out somehow. Maybe I can dress up as Katy Perry. Who knows?
Orlando Bloom. He might not be there.
Yeah. So then we had a secondary email last week saying you have been picked out of the the second ballot from all of the tickets that people couldn't make on the first one. So the people who, for instance, I can't make it, they reject that ticket, and then it goes back into the ballot. Now, this secondary email was actually it said you have until it gives you like a 2-day barrier. You have until X amount of days to claim your ticket. But then also it says first come, first serve. So claim your ticket now. So it was really ambiguous. Is it a first come, first serve? Is it a ballot? So when you click on it, it goes into Ticketmaster, but you can't actually claim your ticket because then you have a secondary email, another email after that, about 2 hours after, that said all of the tickets are sold out. So it was so ambiguous. And also it was really disheartening because I text Rachael, I said, Rachael, you got to go see Take That, because Take That is Rachel's favorite band. Right. And then I text back literally 2 seconds after saying, no, you're not. The tickets are all sold out. So
this is reminding me of my Taylor Swift trauma a little bit. So
honestly,
keep going.
I feel you. It is hard. Although I have seen rough. Taylor Swift in Hyde Park. Have you actually seen her live?
No, I haven't.
Oh my gosh.
But I'm going to, and listen, it's a whole other podcast that I could do about it, but it's like my seats aren't great and like they're technically obstructed, even though they told me they weren't obstructed. And
that's what happened to me with Britney Spears. I was obstructed and I was not happy. But you know what?
We'll get in that's
we're in the room.
Thing, but I'll be in the building.
Exactly. Yes.
We breathe in the same air, so that was the main thing.
Okay, so back to the Royals.
I'm curious, what do you think is going to be the most exciting? The concert is, of course, like a big, flashy centerpiece of the whole weekend. But what do you think besides that, the most exciting part of the coronation itself will be? It could either the service, or is it even just everybody coming together, on the streets of London?
I think it's just that, really. We've got so many friends that we know that are coming over, actually from the US, that are coming over for this concert, which is just absolutely incredible. Sorry, for this coronation, which is absolutely incredible. For me personally, I cannot wait to see the gold carriage coming back in the coronation procession. I just think that's just going to be so iconic. The whole purpose of it is it was built for a coronation, and to actually see it in its purpose coming down the mall with the king and the queen consort wearing the crowns, it's just going to be spectacular. But the actual service itself, again, we've seen clips of Queen Elizabeth II's coronation, but we've never seen the whole thing all the way through. So for us to be able to witness this with our own eyes, watching this on TV, obviously later when we're back home, because we'll be on the mall, fingers crossed, coronation day.
Fingers crossed.
Right.
It's just going to be spectacular. And we were there, as we say, we were there for the whole 4 days of the Jubilee. And there's just something so magical about the whole experience of just being there and just soaking up the atmosphere with everybody else around you.
I think for me, the thing that sticks in my head right now about what I'm looking forward to is actually just that moment where King Charles is kind of stripped down to the plain garments. There's that anointing that happens. It's the most secretive, sacred part of the ceremony. That is his connection to God. And then the coronation chair, a chair that I've seen with my own eyes in Westminster Abbey. It's really unassuming. You look at it and you go, oh, okay, all right. The people have put graffiti in it over the years, and it looks a bit tattered. Yeah, exactly. But it's got so much history attached to it, and to see King Charles on that chair is just the epitome of a king, and to be crowned. It's also a sad day because I mentioned a bit earlier that it's a reminder the Queen's no longer here, but I think it's also a way of solidifying in our minds that he is now the rightful king, and he's no longer Prince Charles, because he was Prince Charles for 70 years, So I think I'm really going to look forward to the parts of the coronation that I think for years and years and years we'll still be seeing pictures of, him with the robes, him with the St. Edward's crown, the coronation chair, the anointing. It's a big moment. It's such a historical moment in our history.
One final question for both of you. It's a big question. Do you think Prince Louis will be allowed to go?
Oh, Louis.
Hang on, I'm trying to get my thoughts.
Boss baby. We can't really call him boss baby anymore because he's just turned 5. I mean,
he still has the personality of it, though.
Yeah,
We love
exactly.
him.
We love him. I mean, who can not forget the iconic photos and images that we saw of him at the pageant? That they were just absolutely hilarious.
He was so great at the Jubilee.
Yeah. He was just loving life, wasn't he? And I think he will be there. I don't know if he'll sit through the whole coronation service itself. But
I hope he does. I really hope he does, because it's going to give more antics.
It will. But I definitely do think he will be in the carriage coming back with Charlotte and George and obviously William and Catherine. I mean, we saw them at Troop in the Colour. So I do think that we are going to see him on Coronation Day. And he's going to look a little star, isn't he? That's what we're all waiting for.
It's definitely something that I'm looking forward to. And I just, I love the photo ops. I love the kids, any, whatever generation it is. You look at photos of William and Harry, when they were kids at any of the royal events, they steal the show. They're the fun part. So, we will definitely be keeping an eye out for whatever they get up to. Rachael, Michelle, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk with us over here on this side of the pond about the coronation. And we hope you get some sleep now, because there's not going to be much sleep in any of our future, really. But if you find spots to take naps, please do so.
It's going to be like the queue all over again for us, I think. Yeah.
Pretty much. We'll do a group text thread and trying to assign nap shifts to everybody.
We're going to need it.
Coronation celebration, Sean.
Thank you. You too as well.
You too.
They are so much fun.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I love hearing their perspective, just sort of like, because they go to all the actual engagements. Like they said, if you follow them on Instagram, you can see that they'll be on sort of like the front of the rope line, as it's called, waiting. They wait hours to be there at any of these events where, Will and Kate or Camilla and Charles are going to be, so they can shake their hands and, meet them. And I've only been to one of those type of events, which was when I actually got to see in that same sort of up close and personal way, Harry and William the day before Harry's wedding, when they went out in Windsor to greet everybody who was, there to sort of like thank them for their support. So
they're true fans. They're true royal
fans.
Family fans. And that's what I've enjoyed just in listening to their podcast is they follow just the charity causes and the official royal events. And so honestly, if the royal family wanted a podcast, theirs would be the one.
No, I mean, like, it's a great podcast to add into, if you are interested in the royals, to add into your mix, because of the fact that, listen, I can't help myself get caught up in the drama. So, like, there's going to be me.
We spilled tea. It's in the name of the podcast.
Yeah, like, that's going to be us. That's going to be me being this guy.
Yeah.
But, like, you can talk just as much, if not more so, about all, like, the actual, like, work that they do. And, we try and bring it back to that, here as well, like, mentioning the fact that this is all happening in the context of work that they do as actual, members of a government. But, like, it's worthwhile remembering that they do so much work, like that they all are existing in this context. They aren't just, for lack of a better phrase, Kardashians. They are in their own little lane and it's very interesting to see both sides of that coin, the celebrity side of it and the sort of like boring, at times boring, middle class working type of job that it can be, which is going to meetings, meeting people, like shaking hands, it's cutting ribbon. Like, it's not super glamorous stuff. But they, those are the moments when they go and do that stuff. That's when we get to see some fun things and fun, unexpected, off camera sometimes and sometimes unrehearsed moments happen with the royals.
Exactly. And I think the next time that you and I will talk, Sean, will be post-coronation.
I can't believe it. I mean, King Charles is King Charles, but he will have officially been invested, as it is. He will have been coronated as king And that is going to be the first time that there will have been a coronation on television in 70 years. There was only one other coronation from a British monarch on television ever. And I mean, again, do the math of when television was invented. So this is something we haven't seen in a long time. And, undoubtedly, there's going to be a lot to process. There's going to be a lot to maybe pick apart and try and understand. So
we'll be here for you. We'll have one final episode.
We're going to have one final episode to put a nice little blue-blooded ribbon. That sounded weird. You know what I mean, dear listener. We're gonna put a bow on things.
Yeah.
And hopefully give you some context as we wrap out of this big chapter in history. So we will not be getting a lot of sleep, but you certainly can if you'd like. And
we'll catch you up.
Need to watch. Yeah, we'll catch you up. You don't need to watch everything because that's what we're here for. So. Last week, guys, we're almost there, so be sure to tune in next week to our final episode of Season 2 of Spilling Royal Tea to recap all of the goings-on that happened during King Charles III's coronation. Spilling Royal Tea is a production of the TMZ Audio Network. It's produced by Maggie Van Dorn. Wild Young is our in-studio producer. Make sure you never miss an episode and subscribe or follow Spilling Royal Tea on your favorite podcast app. And if you like the show, share it with a friend or someone you know who likes to spill the tea. You can also help us grow the podcast by rating and reviewing Spilling Royal Tea on Apple Podcasts. I'm your host, Sean Mandell. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk next week.